radio station, using our voice to rate your choice. Stay tuned.
Hello to all our listeners. This is 90.8 Hills FM radio station Dimapur, and in this segment of Hills Book Club, we are going to read Shoposho, written by Vishü Rita Krocha, illustrations by Christina Malik. This book is published by Pentrill Publications in the year 2015. You can find this book in your nearest bookstores. Now we'll begin reading the book Shoposho. Far away in Sholand, there was an orphan named Shoposho. He lived all by himself on a rich inheritance that had been left behind by his parents. Shoposho owned a great many fields, but people showed him contempt because they were jealous of him. A time came when he grew tired of the villagers' behavior towards him. They encroached upon his property, took away what belonged to him, and gave him no room for friendship. And so one day, he decided to leave everything behind and go in search of a better life. Grabbing his spear, which had always been a prized possession, he threw it at a bale of straw to test its sharpness. He sharpened it over and over again till it could sharply cut the straw. Then he slaughtered a pig, cooked some of the meat while packing some of it raw, and set out for an unknown destiny. Without saying goodbye to any of the villagers, he quietly walked away from Sho village, which had been his home for as long as he could recall. He walked a great distance, covering valley after valley, until he finally entered the thick of the jungle. He began to notice the footsteps of wild animals, but he kept going the distance till he came upon a footprint the size of a plate, one large enough to make him stop and observe. He thought to himself,
"Now, this is my match."
As soon as the thought crossed his mind, he caught sight of a cave ahead of him, and he saw two sets of eyes as large as wild animals. Not long after, he realized it was Pokhadu. Pokhadu is a term used to describe an exceptionally large tiger in one of the Chagasan dialects. Standing at the door of the cave, Shoposho threw a large piece of cooked meat at Pokhadu, but the beast was not amused. He then took out a large piece of raw meat and threw it towards him. This time, Pokhadu jumped on it at once without hesitation. Shoposho then spoke and asked,
"Can we be friends?"
I will only befriend the one called Shoposho.
Pokhadu replied.
"I am Shoposho,"
he said, and then they immediately became fast friends. Pokhadu took him in. They lived in his cave and went hunting together. Shoposho's new life was adventurous. He came to learn the breadth and length of the jungle, its nooks and crannies. Shoposho loved it there, enjoyed every activity that the new two-found friends were indulging in, day after day. One fine morning, they woke up to find a thick vine hanging down the entrance of the cave. Pokhadu tried to pull it down, but failed in his attempts, no matter how many. Shoposho then took out his shining spear and cut it down in one attempt whilst yodeling. Pokhadu watched him and thought,
Shoposho's cannon is exceptionally sharp.
Just as Pokhadu was lost in amazement, his friend turned to him and said,
"Never, ever touch this or you will hurt yourself."
Having been told not to touch it, Pokhadu's curiosity got the better of him, impelling him to play with the spear, only to end up injuring his paw. Shoposho saw him bleeding and began to rebuke him.
"I told you not to touch it."
he yelled, although at heart he loved him like family. He loved him so much that he went hunting and brought home a deer for his sick friend so he could get well soon. Pokadu recovered in no time. The two friends went back to enjoying their lives, doing things to make each other laugh and indulging in pure unadulterated life of the wild. In their gay days, they also went to Sho village. The presence of Pokado often scared the village people away. They would leave behind whatever they were carrying and run for their lives. Shoposho and Pokado would find baskets of either salt or rice, which they carried home as their trophy of the day. During such times, Shoposho teased his friend to carry the treasures home, but they both knew that the tiger could not, for the life of him, carry a load like a human being. In the end, it was always Shoposho who willingly and happily carried home those goods for both of them to enjoy. One afternoon, as they were lazing around, Shoposho posed a question before Pokado.
If I die, will you eat me?
To this, he replied,
If I eat you, you'll cut me.
and they both laughed
Ha ha.
because they knew in the heart that they were best of friends. Another time, they were venturing out by the riverside when Shoposho acted as if he were dead, just to see the reaction of his friend. Pokadu tried his best to wake him, but he wouldn't move. Then, looking at his friend, he said,
Should I eat this one first?
while indicating towards his hat.
Or should I eat your hand first?
Lifting his leg further, he said.
Should this be my first bite?
He tried the same with each part of his body, but Shoposho did not stir a bit. Pokadu's face fell. He thought him really dead.
My friend is perhaps really gone.
He sadly thought in the mind. So he dug a grave and began preparing to bury his much-loved friend. Spotting a firm rock by the riverbank, he decided to pull it over so he could cover Shoposho's grave with it. But as he tried his best to move the slippery rock, Pokadu released involuntary farts at each attempt, forcing Shoposho to burst into laughter.
Ha 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 ha.
Realizing that he had been severely tricked, Pokado turned to him and said,
My friend, why did you fool me for so long?
A few days later, it was Pokado's turn to play the trick as they were going out for a stroll in the jungle. For a while, Shoposho did not notice the absence of his friend. However, turning around to find the tiger no longer behind him, he traced his way back and found Pokado lying on the grass, unmoving. Thinking this must be to get back at him, Shoposho took out his spear and playfully pretended to contemplate on cutting his hat, then moved further to his paws and other parts of the body, but Pokado laid still.
My friend is really dead.
He said to himself even as the thought frightened him. But Shoposho, desperate to see his face brought back to life, decided to try another thing, hoping it would work. He pulled out a whisker and inserted it in Pokado's nose. His friend, unable to stand it, started sneezing really hard.
Hachoo! Hachoo! Hachoo!
And Shoposho was glad that he had not yet lost his companion. However, he remarked,
How could you fool me for that long?
happy in each other's company, the two unusual friends walked and danced their way back to the cave. One fine day, the villagers from Sho land came to call Shoposho back to the village. The only reason they did so was because they could no longer stand Pokado's frequent unwarranted intrusions.
Shoposho, please come home. We will return all your belongings and all your fields. You can take them all back.
Shoposho thought about it and decided it might be wise to go back home and start anew, for in a way he was also deeply rooted to his birthplace. And so, after a tearful goodbye, he hugged Pokado and left with his people. Days passed. Shoposho and Pokado paid visits to each other every once in a while. They would chat and laugh over good old memories. Times, however, changed. One fateful day, Shoposho fell seriously ill and was bedridden. So he sent a honeybee as a messenger to Pokado's cave. But his friend refused to believe the news.
How can I trust a honeybee's words?
He thought. Then Shoposho sent a king wasp. This time he mindfully thought,
Perhaps it is true, since a king in its own right has come to deliver me the message.
So he hunted a deer and hurriedly set out for Sho village. When he got there, Shoposho's relatives stopped Pokado from seeing him. He silently wept and requested Shoposho to give him his hand through a tiny window. When he did, Pokado took his friend's hand and left him a teardrop.
I have left a bunch of green leaves for you outside.
He told him and left, while in truth it was a deer that he brought. Shoposho felt worse and worse, and his ill health finally took the better of him. He passed away on a beautiful day, contrary to the grief enveloping his homeland that day. By this time, the people of the village had grown to love him. Shoposho's last thoughts were about the love and friendship he had found in the wild, about him and Pokado basking in the sun. It was about them setting out to the depths of the forest, hunting for food or fishing in the rivers. He thought about the times they would trick each other and laugh their hearts out, how they cheered each other up in the gloom. Shoposho died thinking of the friend he would never get to see again. In his dying bed, he still managed to smile, because this friendship was the best thing that had ever happened to him. His funeral was one of the saddest days for the Sho people. Saddened more so because of the guilt they felt for the way they had treated him at the beginning. A large parade of animals even marched into the village to pay their last respects at the funeral, but nothing could have been more enriching than Pokado's last gifts of 3 kinds of animals, including a deer, a wildcat, and a jungle fowl, which he laid on Shoposho's grave as a sacrifice. So, dear listeners, that was the book written by Vishü Rita Krocha. The illustrations are even better, so go and grab the book at your nearest bookstores. Now, we will leave you with the poem The Tyger, written by William Blake. See you again next time on Hill's Book Club.
The Tyger by William Blake. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?
In what distant deeps or skies burn the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire?
And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet?
What the hammer, what the chain, in what furnace was thy brain? What the unveil, what dread grasp, there is deadly terror's clasp.
When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry?
You're listening to 90.8 Hills FM Radio.
This is 90.8 Hills FM radio station, using our voice to rate your choice. Stay tuned.